Right. Hello, beautiful people. I'm Jackson from Unfucked by Design, and this is a conversation with Kevin Richard, a fellow designer based in Switzerland. Kevin is the founder of the design and critical thinking community that dives deep into topics such as design, ethics, and sense making. In this conversation, we discuss the origins of his community, design for complexity, building a portfolio of design challenges rather than having all your eggs in one basket, and of course, co-creation with AI. Like even with 2 hours, we still managed to run out of time. So we hope to continue with a follow-up conversation soon. Timestamps linked in the description. Big thank you to Kevin for taking the time for this discussion, and also a huge thank you to you if you're listening. It's still early days for this podcast, so if you have any feedback or recommendations, please feel free to leave them in the comments or send us a message. Sounds cliche, but please like and subscribe to show your support. Much appreciated. Big love, and see you soon. Hey Kevin, how you doing? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Really happy to be here.
Yeah,
I'm
look,
doing
we've
well.
tried a few
Uh,
times, and this is the first time that we've tried to run this in our afternoon because you're based in Switzerland, the French part,
yes.
yeah,
Yes, that's right.
and
Yeah.
so finding time zones that align is the
Mm.
challenge. But look, we're here, and I'm really happy that we made it happen. It's I think I actually learned quite a lot this morning. Some directions where I didn't expect this to go. I found a few of your articles, and I was like, yeah, there's a couple of little bits and pieces that I didn't know existed yesterday that I brought to the fold, and I think they're probably more valuable than what I was going to talk about originally. So I'm excited about that. But but look, first I'll introduce you to Dave. Dave, you haven't met before. He's a producer and co-host on this podcast. Dave, meet Kevin.
Hey Kevin, how you going, mate? Very impressed with the website. I like it. I like the format. I like the layout, the articles, the content. Yeah, very useful, very helpful.
Well,
Yeah,
happy to meet you,
it's a
Dave.
Yeah, likewise.
it's really a job well done, Kevin. I really do enjoy your content and your community as well, and I think that's probably a good place to just introduce or tell a little bit of a story about how we got here. So yeah, Kevin's a fellow designer based in Switzerland and founder of the design and critical thinking community, which I've been enjoying a lot over the last month or so. And I suppose, I've found a kindred spirit on the other side of the planet through the topics that Kevin is not afraid to cover, things from, ranging from design and ethics and sense making, which, we will dance between today. That look, I'll read a little bit of a description from his community, and so we can start from there. But so Kevin is the founder of Design and Critical Thinking, about co-creation in the age of AI, amongst other things. Right? That is the. You know what, Dave? I actually have no idea where I came up with that first paragraph. Are you still there, Kevin?
Yes, I'm still here.
it's, like,
I,
it's just
I
your
find,
camera's gone blank, and I'm just like, hold on. I think I
no,
just made up the
no.
second part of that paragraph. That's really that is not
No,
you at all. I'm gonna start
it,
with the real paragraph now, which is design and critical thinking is a free online open community launched in August 2020 by Kevin Richard. We aim to build shared understanding, collective knowledge, and sense making at the intersection of disciplines such as design, business, innovation, change, ethics, systems practices, complexity thinking, networks, etc., etc., etc. Forget about the first paragraph. I made that up completely. So, the last part was all Kevin. And
the AI was
yeah,
listening and started to auto type and fill in some of the text on FigJam.
nice. But welcome, Kevin. And look, over to you, my friend. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and the community you've built.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so basically, I will define myself as a designer. I have to say right away, I don't like titles and stuff like that, really. Especially some labels. Some people can add, service design, whatever. I don't really care. I'm a designer. That would be the best label to define what I'm doing. And because of that, I'm interested in many different topics. As I said, I'm based in Switzerland and currently working in the health insurance industry. And yeah, and
Nice.
well, basically the community itself is what I would call a happy accident, because I never planned to create a community. Basically, I was in innovation event, and we had like it was during the pandemic, and basically it was online, and people were discussing on a Slack channel, aside from the main event, and someone asked, well, you guys, you innovation practitioners, what kind of tools are you using in your work? And everyone shared the same tools: business model canvas, value
Yeah.
proposition canvases, stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's really sad to hear that everyone are using the same tools, right? It's there's so many things you can, so many tools, so many disciplines that exist around innovation that could be helpful to do innovation. So I shared on Twitter, hey, that would be interesting if we could, bring up people from different backgrounds and disciplines in the same place and discuss about this kind of stuff, right? And someone said, let's do it. I did it.
Yeah.
This is how it happened, basically.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean the yeah, and I mean the first ones you just rattled off: business model canvas, business innovate, and value proposition canvas, things like that. I mean, why do you think that they've become the go-to? Because I mean, they are, amongst other, frameworks of rapid, ideation and thinking, like, they had that lean startup canvas and all these different canvases and things that have popped up. Why do you think that it's sort of settled on the, especially like the examples you just mentioned, the strategizer format, the business model canvas, and value proposition canvas? They seem to have stood the test of time and stuck around. Is it because they're just louder online, or what is it?
That's a good question. I don't okay, I will not claim to have the actual true answer to this question. I have some good guesses, but that would be, uh, you can disagree, and I will be
Yeah,
fine with
totally.
that, right?
Yeah.
So first thing, it's not usually it's not the best tools that win on the market, right? So it's not the best products. The one that works, that are successful, are the one that have the better network effect, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would believe that Strategizer is really good at creating network effects around what they are doing. They are based in Switzerland, by the way, so uh,
Oh,
I
is that
can
right?
I can go. Yeah, I can go in their place and complain about that. Uh,
That's Oscar. What's his last name? Oscar.
Alexander Osterwalder.
Oh,
yes,
Alexander
he's
Osterwald. Oh, that's right, Osterwald.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swiss guy. He's based in. They are based in Zurich, basically, so
Oh,
not
okay,
that far
cool.
from where I live. No, and so that would be the first thing. It's not because it's widely popular that it's necessarily a good thing, right? And the second point is that I don't know, maybe there's 2 or 3 points to that, but the second point would be that um, I mean, they're selling their tools, and they are, uh, how can I say that? I mean, there's a market for, tools and workshops and stuff like that. And I think that they succeeded in actually defining this market and, being popular there. And the tools look simple, right? It helps a lot.
Yeah.
It looks simple. You just have to fill the boxes, and incidentally, you ask the good questions, and you have something at the end that resembles, um, like a potential good result, right? So
Yep.
for that part, it works well. I'm not saying, by the way, that it doesn't work and you should have never used them, right? But
Hmm.
but now they are, kind of ubiquitous in innovation. It's hard to not come to these tools if you discuss innovation with someone that does innovation,
Yeah.
right? Um, and yeah, because it's successful around workshops and the business of certification and the business of selling courses online and stuff like that,
Hmm.
it's recognized by a lot of companies to be something, right? Something that you might trust, right? Because it's popular and
It's
it's
got
well
a good
known.
brand. Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
yes, and so it's easier to sell internally within companies,
Hmm.
which is always the most difficult part when you are working in a place, is to sell, is to buy time and buy space to actually do the work, right?
That's right.
And
You
we
need to
all know,
leverage the
yeah,
credibility.
yes,
Yeah.
and we all know that in design and innovation, people are in the same, I would say, in the same place than
Hmm.
us on that part, that they want to buy some freedom to act, so they can actually advance in understanding the problem and proposing something that creates value. Um, so they do it a bit differently than us, but they have some similar issues and some similar challenges.
Yep.
And yeah, I would say it's easier when you say, you take your widely known tool and you say, well, we use that, and everyone agrees because it's obvious, right? So
That's
I
right.
would say I would say it's the third
Yeah,
part. Yeah.
that's it. And I think because I essentially there's always an entity or entities in the transaction, right? And that is, sort of business model canvases matching, um, the customer segments with the value proposition, and then these other business related segments, to
Mm.
come up with a snapshot. And I suppose, it's pretty safe to say that every other tool of design thinking has at its core the same premise, right? Like
Yes.
the same function. There's just different ways of doing it. But I mean, like you said, the leveraging credibility. I mean, maybe it's because I've built an instinct and intuition with the business model canvas that I jump to that straight away. But I definitely see holes, and there's definitely a time and a place for it. But like maybe give us an example of, I suppose one of your articles on your site, or the sections of your site that I was really interested in, was the Explorer's Guide, where you talk
Oh
about
yeah.
how um, you know problem solution matches, uh, or thinking things in terms of just a simple problem solution match is a problem sometimes in itself, right? That you need to be,
Yes.
um, and that's, I suppose, part of the broader sense making topic, right? Which is where I think you and I
Hmm.
gel quite well. That's and so yeah, maybe talk a little bit about other frameworks that you did explore when you sparked up that Twitter conversation, And maybe that touches on a little bit to do with this explorer's guide. I'm not too sure, but see where you go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we can just frame the issue that will lead us to the discussion about the problem with problem solving, right? Which is a form of linearity in the process itself of finding a solution to a well-defined problem. We are guilty of the same kind of problem in design. I would say the past 20 years of design practices has been much more about selling an ideal process to business people than working on our tools to, not even in our tools, but what kind of symbolic languages are we using in our fields to talk about what we are doing, right? We swapped the imagination with a kind of engineering type of thinking of what we are doing. Like we are problem solvers, right? We are just here to fix things, right? Make them work. And that puts aside a lot of things that exist in design, but we are not really using it anymore. And I do make connections with philosophy and other type of things where that would help us to bring more nuances and diversity in the type of ideas and even language we use to talk about problems or context or situations. So that would be a first, I would say, a first issue that we can pin and say, okay, that's something that do exist, and it's not only in design. You can find the same kind of issue in innovation and in the business world in general, right? It's it gives a full sense of things being about defining a problem, and the better it is defined, then the better we can propose a solution. And this match that you just discussed,
Yeah.
that things align, right? But if we think this way, then it's a puzzle game. Like we take for granted that it's just a matter of alignment, that all the pieces are here already, and we just have to find the right alignment and magically it fits, and that's problem solved, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I frame it around this idea that it's engineering type of thinking. And I would say it's not bad in and of itself, but it works only in some contexts, and in other contexts it just doesn't work. And that's one of the main problem I see when I discuss with even young, just new designers, people that just come in the field. They expect things to be this way, and sometimes they are just facing unsolvable problems. And that's fine. I mean, it's fine that it's unsolvable. It's not the point to be solved, right? Sometimes the best way we can just solve a problem is not solving it. It's just making it irrelevant, right? Dissolving it. That's the idea of dissolving problems. And to do that, you have to sidestep. You have to approach things indirectly. And if you take our tools today, the one that we talk about the most, they are not designed for that, right? They are designed to be frontal, just to take the problem right in front of us and say, we will solve this thing, we will clarify it, and we'll solve it. So you can say now what would be an alternative to that, and the alternative to that is just to say we don't want so all these kind of frameworks and tools, they are what we call funneling process. So the more you advance in your process, the clearer things are, the less options you have, so it's easy to pick, and then you make one decision. We bet on this solution, and we invest all we have in this solution, and we have our solution to our problem. now, if you think in terms of optionality and in uncertainty, you would say, but it's really a dumb decision to make, to bet everything on one option, right?
That's
If you
right.
are
Yeah.
in a constantly moving space where things are always unclear, always undefined, and things change all the time, well, it's not a good thing to bet everything on one solution. The best
No.
approach would be to invest in many different options and see what is the one that emerges from all the rest, right? That makes more
Yep.
sense in the context. Um, and to do that, you need what we call layering processes, where you can just bet on many things and add up in a portfolio of what we call a portfolio of strategies. Um, so you are not stuck in one optimal but not working space. Um, and yeah, the answer to that kind of thing is always diversity. And if you talk to to investors and banking people, you will see that they have the same kind of approach. Well, it's really well framed, and but the idea is to invest in many, diversifying your portfolio, right? Basically to
Yep.
not be fragile to
Mm.
any major shift in the market. That would be the same kind of idea, but with
Yeah.
design strategies or design interventions, and not being stuck in just one place, one solution. That means
Yeah.
also that the solution shouldn't be framed in terms of an object, but a way of addressing the problem. And then you have multiple objects that could do the job. So
That's right.
it
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
also taking a step back and having a better understanding of the situation in a broader sense. So yeah, that's why I'm saying in this Explorer guide, that we need curiosity. We need to be curious, even more so than just being good solvers, problem solvers.
And look, I could see that metaphor being, or at least having it documented somewhere. I think that's probably the value for me, because like I think being a a designer, a product strategist, product designer, UX designer, I'm always trying to communicate the value of broadening um, your availability to tackle multiple solutions to the same problems, or try and ensure that you are solving, um, or at least clearly articulating what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and not putting all your eggs in one basket with
Mm.
the solutions. And I think having it documented in this Explorer guide, if anyone's watching, I've got it up on the screen here, or anyone's listening, I've got it up on the screen here. Really, really great framework, documented in a way that you could send it to key stakeholders or decision makers, I suppose, to explain the value of this. I mean, it would also be really valuable to young designers as well to explain this way of thinking about the problem ecosystem. Which, yeah, look, I mean, uh, just recently, looking at a roadmap that was set by somebody across multiple business units that was had clear delivery dates and very little research time assigned, and just that pressure when you look at something
Mm-hmm.
like that, right? Like when you just see it and you just go, where did any of this come from? Like, where, like, and that then somebody has to be responsible for those delivery dates. And is it any wonder that there's a lot of stress in these
Mm-hmm.
organizations as a designer, as a developer, you know, as a producer of whatever output it is that you're producing. So I really appreciate the metaphor. It's really where I'm going with that, and I'd recommend anyone to have a look at this when they get a chance.
So then, Kevin, you're talking about having like a tool chest of solutions to tackle like any problem and not being fixed to any particular solutions, right? So, and having that sort of flexibility. So Jackson, you just gave an example of being stuck to like a rigid timeline, and not having very much flexibility for design resources. So, is this where you would like reach into the tool chest to say, okay, I can't use the process that I'm used to, or is there something else that would work given that we're screwed down by time resources?
I think this is it's more about the fact that there is no one solution. So Kevin's got he's got the community that he's created, which is the design and critical thinking. This explorer's guide is it's a metaphor for how to look at complexity through the lens of design, right? Like that there is no one problem. That and it's very difficult to and dangerous to assume that there is, or that you're even expressing what that problem is the correct way, right? That you should look at it through the lens of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kevin, the lens of an explorer, who's coming to an uncharted land and has to manage risk as they're doing it, and it's just a different way of looking at the way of handling design and complexity. Is that right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right. And I just want to say, it's not a tool. It's it's not. I don't propose a way of doing that. I don't propose a process here. It's just a tool it's a tool for thinking of
a metaphor
of your situation, but it will surely go into conflict with the kind of the kind of goals you have in most organizations, right? Because usually the place of design in companies is a production place, right? We have to produce something. That's where most people see our value, right? And that's an issue in and of itself, but it's not one that you can solve at your level.
No.
So it would be unfair to me to say, well, go to your manager now and say it's about complexity and just let's not do this thing because it's just dumb and blah blah blah, because it won't work, right?
No.
You cannot convince someone to not produce something where they are even them are measured on how many outputs they are producing. So it would be unfair to ask that. It's just for you to be able to step back and say, okay, now we are doing this, and we know it won't be good enough, right? So let's see if we can do other things in parallel, and using what you are doing right now as a way to introduce other things that a production process cannot account for, right? And then just you being able to add up some things in your process that would create a less fragile design outcome. That's the idea. But
let's read a little
to people that.
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I would repeat myself, so no worries.
That's all right. No, I was just going to read a little section from here. So the Explorer's Framework is a set of ideas and concepts for practitioners to help approach challenges and problems in ways that add layers rather than subtract, enable possibilities rather than deduce, diversify points of view, and enable a portfolio of strategies and actions to tackle complex challenges rather than single point solutions. Exploration is not to be opposed to conception. It is a useful tension. Exploration should be pursued as a parallel, ongoing journey with no clear end. It is in the philosophy and ethics of the curious, humble learner, which is great. Like, I think does that help, Dave, summarize things a little bit?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah,
no, makes sense.
Yeah, because I think Kevin's the community itself design and critical thinking, that is what emerged from your conversation on Twitter, right? Kevin, where you were discussing, alternatives to, the frameworks like business model canvas and value proposition canvas, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, partially, like it was never the plan to to come with this this guide at the beginning, but after some discussions with the community, so we have like every 2 weeks we have like really informal discussion with whomever wants to connect to the event and discuss with other people from the community. And so it's really unguided. We don't have plans. We don't have schedules, agendas, and stuff like that. We just discuss randomly about whatever people have in mind. But when you do it several times, so you repeat the exercise, you see some themes and patterns emerges from the conversations. They are really similar, and usually when you see like some kind of ongoing thread about some issues, some problems, and some challenges that people are facing, then you can start to make a picture of what it is, and then and have more guided discussions about it. And
that's right.
This is really where we came from with that. We directed, throughout time, things became a bit more directed so we had like some specific events to discuss about some of those themes that emerged during the conversations. And this is basically what inspired me to write about this. At the beginning, it was just a series of articles on what it would look like if we took a complexity lens and we wanted to bring that back into design. And doing so made me realize that actually it was not like adding something new, but some kind of rediscovering links with some some traditional aspects of design in the arts, basically sense design connected to the arts and to the philosophy of design. And if you look back into the academic literature of design, you'll find some connection with what I'm discussing here. It's not really something new. It's rediscovering something that's already existed in some sense. And I'm using some concept that I heard, in other places. So I really did not invent anything here. It's just my way of framing it, right? So just want to stay humble about that. And so at some point we were discussing, and I was working in the banking industry at the time when I started to write this, and I said to me, well, I have been in a webinar with some people from the company I was working in, where someone presented to some business analysts and product people the design thinking process, but the ideas one. And I just started to write this, and oh my God, it's I mean, how to ask people to be, even more, production oriented and really not taking setback and stuff like that. So I said, if I had to frame it in a way that is simple to anyone to understand what I mean with complexity and these kind of things, what this would look like. And this is how I reuse this concept of this metaphor of islands and discovering an island, and using metaphors to tackle some really complex issues, while people can take the metaphor and make it their own, and adding their own understanding to it. Is I would say the most interesting part in framing things this way. So,
and look, you have turned it into a tool. Really, it's a tool to just for communicating that that metaphor in a clear and simple way, right? Like if you can send that link to somebody, I think it's a great step, right? Or if you can share that and align on the message that you're trying to convey with your team, because they're tricky conversations, right? When you're trying to buy more time for research or buy more time for any part of the design process, and you've got these business pressures that just want output and misaligned expectations and people in between that can't confidently communicate back up the chain what might be the reason behind needing some more time to solve things better, right? Then having a common frame to put these things through, I think, is really useful. And that's, we'll come back to the design sprint later, because that was one of the articles I found this morning. And that's one of the benefits. Well, it was one of the benefits, right? That you can, it's packaged up in a way that you can, communicate to the business, right? And they just, okay, wow, there's some shiny people doing YouTube stuff on this, and it's Google, GV Ventures, and all of these other people are doing it, and so it's an easier sell, right? And I think you even quoted Jake Knapp at one point. It's the Trojan horse of design thinking,
Trojan horse
right?
of design, yeah, nice.
So you're sort of getting. You're getting it's an easier business case to make, because you have an output in a shorter period. It doesn't necessarily mean it's successful, but it is an output, and people can see things happening really quickly. And so, I think just aligned with what it is that you're talking about here, and you said it's not a tool, but I'm saying it really is. It's a tool of being able to clearly, just the fact that you can send a link to this explorer's guide to somebody on your team, or share it amongst your team and say, hey, look, maybe this is a good way of explaining where we're at right now in terms of complexity. And
so if I have to be a bit critical, critical about what I wrote, it's an introduction to some concepts. It doesn't tell you what to do with that, and that's the issue with the tool itself. It's good at providing concepts that helps you think of in terms of complexity and what it means to explore. It's a matter of navigation, finding a direction and stuff like that. Okay, good. Now I have this deadline, and I have this, this I don't know, KPIs or whatever. I have to do it at work. It's not a matter of exploration. It's a matter of satisfying those goals that are imposed onto me, right? And this is where it stops. The tool is useful to help you introduce concepts. So if I have to be critical, and I like to be critical about things, that will be where the tool it stops being useful, because it doesn't provide actual means to apply those concepts. So it's a good introduction. I'm happy to hear that you believe it can be approached by business people, because this is one of my biggest concerns. To me, it makes sense, because I know what is in the content and what it means, and I know that some designers can understand that, but I don't know if business people can really get
I think
the meaning of it, right? So
I think a majority of the roles within an organization would just dismiss it, as they would anything that we brought to them, because it's just like their focus is output, right? It's like and so it's definitely like anything that we like it's a constant struggle, right? As designers to that tension, that dance between, delivering what the business sees as being the most important thing to do now for many reasons, right? A lot of which we have no access to and will not have any access to, right? We just can't affect it. And, so that tension between, those sorts of reactionary decisions and doing things right in the background. And, so who, when I think about who I could share this with, who would understand, it's probably more building consensus on a smaller team, and sort of building trust, that we understand what it is we're dealing with, and then who would they share it with in the C-suite? Probably, I don't know, like that's where I start to go, well, there's, I think that's when they're starting to look for short videos and summaries of things that are just easy to understand and just pass that responsibility to someone else to make the decision,
But you mentioned running things like in parallel, Kevin. Like, what does that look like? Like, if it is production and output that's required, and then you're still searching for space and time to be able to like explore something like this, how do you run something in parallel? Like that sounds like it'd be quite demanding. What's your take on that?
I can give you actually an example because I did that recently. So so where I'm working, I'm in charge of developing the design culture in the company, and to do that, before I came in the company, one of the objectives was to having training courses given to employees. So we increase the knowledge of design within the company. If you ask me, I wouldn't do it necessarily this way because I find training is interesting, but it's not really working always well for this kind of goal of increasing the design capabilities of the company. But this is a goal and then an objective that was given to me and imposed to me, right? So in terms of production, that means I have to produce some training courses, right? I have to give them to provide them to people. So I did it because I was required to. But I used the training sessions to do something else. I used it to do some narrative research. So basically, I used the opportunity of meeting people in the organization to ask questions about how they do things in their teams, what kind of challenges they see, what kind of problems they see, and stuff like that. So I had like some really specific questions. I won't go into details now, but basically I used that opportunity to retrieve some data from the field. So it's sorry, I cannot pronounce that. I'm too French to no, let's you heard me. You understood me. Right?
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
So yeah, it's I used this opportunity to learn about the problem. What is the context?
Yeah, it's like
Because it's
contextual inquiry.
Yes. So
kind of.
basically people tell you, well, in the organization the issues are this and that, but it's always coming from the same people, the one, the managers. So the information went into so many layers in the organization before it arrived at these managers, that it's distorted. Basically it went into filtering, it filters and filters and filters, and what you hear, it's a distorted version, simplified and distorted version of it. So it's not reliable, right? It's interesting because it gives you some direction, but it's not enough, right? So using the training sessions to retrieve information about how people collaborate, how how do they feel that how much freedom in trying new things they have in their team, right? Stuff like that helps you understand where they actually where the organization stands in terms of maturity, of design maturity, right? Because if now I'm giving training and most people in their place, they are not allowed to take time to do something else that what they are asked to, then it's doing that for nothing. It will never change anything. People will never try the things you are giving them during the training because they cannot. It's impossible. It's a
Sure.
structural constraint, right? So I use that and I mapped out the narratives, what people are saying about these kind of things, right? And then now we are trying to use that to do some things different. So I use that and I showed it to the organization. I said, hey, this is where we stand. This is not me. I'm not saying that to you. It's what the people are saying, right? And using that to create more opportunities.
Clear? Sorry, Kevin. Was it clear to the? I mean, did you bake that into the scope of work when you went into that project? Did you know that you were going to do that? Did you choose to sort of do it a little bit covert, so you then had that information packaged at the end to be able to say, hey, look, or were they well aware that you were going to do that research simultaneously and and agreed that it was a good idea?
It was clearly hidden from them.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Well did they respond well to it? How was it received?
Actually, it was well received. They were surprised. They could not think of using the training sessions to do that. It was not possible for them. It was just a matter of output, and it's always how you see it in an organization. The I would say the goal itself. I mean, the output becomes the goal, not what the output could generate, right? So it's always an issue. Now, extending their perspective about that is doing what I did, but it was incremental in the sense that we used the pilot session. I used it to see how much space there would be to have this kind of conversation during the training, right? Because it wasn't clear to me. And it wasn't clear to many people because it was the first time we did this kind of training in the organization. So I used a pilot for that, and then as the training course changed because of the first pilot and what we learned about that, I started to design a better way as well to get feedback about what I was looking for. So
and it's interesting because it feels to me like because that's become a pattern in my career as well, right? That you need to, as we say, get some runs on the board. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but quite
colloquial
often,
cricketing term.
Yeah, quite often the scope of work is defined, and we just need a designer, right? Like, we're just going to get this designer to come in and design the stuff. And you come in and you've got really, especially unless you've got, unless you are Alexander Osterwalder, is it? Or, somebody with incredible, design clout. You have to build that clout yourself, right? And you have to swallow a little bit of design pride, and you have to figure out a way of doing what you know is right, but just enough so you don't burn out, right? because you need to sell it back to the business, and then I think that's probably I think that comes with experience, because then you do see designers at certain stages of their career that just come in guns blazing, just wanting to, there's like, no, we can't do that. That's like, no, we need. It's like, well, it doesn't serve you well to be the thorn in people's side, and that, and I think, as designers, I think we feel that way quite often through our career, that we are seen to be, because it's our job to ask tough questions and probe a little bit deeper, that we, start to be seen by some as just overthinking things. It's just too you're making things complex. They're not really that complex. You're making them complex. So
Yeah.
you just have to
you just have to do this prototype. It's simple, right? Just build it.
Simple.
And why are you asking those questions? But you know what?
Yeah.
You're right. People don't like in organizations to say to hear a no.
No.
So there are smart ways to say no without saying no. But actually, I want to say I'm a lazy designer, right? I'm a lazy one, really. If I can avoid doing something, I would avoid it. And I do that. I do say that in a good sense. I mean, it's positive
I know what you mean.
to be lazy, because I didn't put that much effort to do this research hidden within the training session. Like it was not added work, extra work. It was anyway I had to do reports, and anyway I had to to get some feedbacks from the people so I had to do it anyway. It was built in already, so it was just an opportunity to do it. And if I can say that to anyone that just listening to that, is there are plenty of opportunities in your day, in your daily activities, to do things differently without adding more work loads. You just have to be to perceive them and see how can you embed something in your current way of doing that will with time gently change things and reorient them in a different direction, and not doing everything right now, but adding some stuff that just steer the direction in another place, right? And
the concept of the atomic habits, right? The 1%, that changes the direction over the long haul, over the longer time frame.
Yeah,
I would
because
say,
as you said,
that
you're not Alexander. Alexander Osterwalder. You are not selling the Big Bang, right?
No.
And if you do well, good for you. But it's not most of designers that sells like the big thing that will change everything in the company. And
right.
Even if it's true, Osterwalder, they just sell they just sell the idea and and I would say the canvas, right?
Yeah.
If tomorrow the organization don't change, even if they paid like, I don't know, millions to Osterwalder, it's not their shit, right? They don't really care. They're just here for business. When you are working in an organization, that's your place. That's your role that is at stake. So it's hard to sell the Big Bang anyway. So and it's for the good, for the better, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, look, I think we've got a whole quiver of tools that we can use as designers to get our job done, and it's incredibly, it's a really diverse and complex way of thinking, really, and a one size fits all thing is just not. So I think where you've gone with your framework, your metaphor for the Explorer's Guide is great, that it actually stops at what tools to use, because there's so many people that have already put together libraries of tools that you can use. There's so many, right? And I think, look, it's great where you've gone with that. Love it. And I wonder if maybe, because I'm just looking at the clock now, we're coming up to an hour, and I got some other cool stuff I wanted to talk about. And I think I'm going to change the subject. Let's do something that nobody would expect in this time or place, and talk about AI.
Well,
let's, let's
this little thing, yeah, not many people are discussing about AI these days. So
nobody. So yeah, I thought we might just shed some light on this thing, illuminate the dark corners of the internet where nobody's going currently with some AI stuff. But look, I think this is probably good to like just to recap a little bit on why I bring it back to AI at the moment. I think because Dave and I, like you with your community, this is emerging out of these conversations, what we're creating, and really our intention is to put our skills to better use, right? To actually try and find a way. If I was to think about what is the job I'm trying to get done by hosting this podcast and turning it into something that ultimately we enjoy and may create other opportunities that would sustain us over time. The reason is because I want to find a place for to make better use of my skills, and Dave as well. He's got a baby on the way. We've all got kids, and we want to wake up in the morning and know that we're doing things for good reasons and for good ends, right? And so when I think, like everyone, we're all trying to make sense of this AI thing, and you go through these stages of real so sort of grappling with the reality of this thing. And I think everyone is simultaneously. I think maybe Kevin, you've probably started thinking about automation, quite a while ago, as did I, because we're embedded in this space, right? And so you start to see, these clickbait titles for products that are claiming to make things easier to do and replace people. And it's been happening for quite a while, right? It's picked up pace.
yes.
And so I don't want this podcast to be about AI, but we're looking at design and creating something better together for the future. Putting design skills to better use to affect a better future, and well, AI is part of that, right? Like it's here, or call it automation, or call it whatever. And your article, turbulence in AI from a third perspective to design principles. I thought that was a really cool spot to linger for a moment, because we did a podcast, and this is our first pilot we did with an AI a company that is doing generative game assets. And it was a really, really interesting conversation, right? Like, and really great company, Australian based, super fascinating stuff. On the other side of this conversation is, me wanting to go a little bit deeper into how to make sense of this thing. Not just, okay, this is a business model and it's really cool, which it was, absolutely. But what does it mean for us to be heading down this pathway? And ultimately, how can we help steer things in a better direction if we can, like being just a couple of design boffins from different corners of the globe, like what can we do? Can we do anything, right? And so I really liked because we ran a workshop after that first podcast pilot where we tried to communicate how not even communicate, just explore in a workshop setting with the CFO of that or COO of that company, how a designer might collaboratively map a customer experience through remote workshopping or workshopping, and then how we might augment that process with a language model like GPT-4, right? And it was really, really interesting. It was I learned a lot, definitely left me with more questions than answers at the end, which is an interesting place to be for a lot of people, I think, at the moment, who are spending a lot of time with these things. I think it's like, it seems to be the more time you spend with it, the more work it gives you. Like it's not actually making things easier yet in a lot of ways, and so this turbulence and AI, the third perspective to design principles. I'll read out the principles at the end because I thought they were quite good and relate to the workshop that we ran, which is so here are some principles as a proposal to approach AI with a design process. So it was define context. So seek situated human and non-human knowledge and experiences to highlight relationships, narrative research. And the second point is foster collaboration through small groups around said knowledge, experience, and relationships to generate themes and new relationships. And the third point was support theme generation with AI. Each group act as located context with their knowledge and understanding to feed the AI, but incentivize reinterpretation and recontextualization by the group upon the output. And the fourth and last point was design interventions. Use the generated themes and relationships to design interventions, portfolio of strategies, back to that complexity thinking with the explorer's guide, right? Like multiple, a portfolio of strategies, and then back into the context. So, I mean, great article. I think that we're really aligned on these things, and where do you see, how do you feel about the technology now and these principles that you outlined? Do they still stand? Have you learned more since you wrote them? How long ago did you write them?
Wow, that's a good question. That was a few weeks, or maybe it was in February, something like
There
that.
we
I
go,
don't remember
February. I can
exactly.
see now.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been a few months already. Time flies. No, so yeah, so the technology is changing fast. So I'm not claiming to be an expert in AI. I'm following what is happening. Um, I read also a lot of articles, um, especially in how how those tools works, right, and how you can make sense of the kind of things they do. So it's helpful for you. Something I'm really interested in. To be frank, I don't really care that much about the technology and the tool itself because maybe now it's this and maybe in 1 year it will be something totally different. And that's not really, I mean, it's changing so fast that focusing right now on some specific aspect of of AI might not be relevant in 2 months, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, focusing on the tool and the features of the technology is something that already a lot of people are doing. So I'm not sure if it's really interesting. What I'm really interested in is, let's say we want to use use those tools. They will fit in some processes at some point. Something that you can be sure of is if they do, they will change the process itself. Like we will have to adapt how we work so we can embed them in our process. So it's not really a replacement; it's a recombination in some sense, right? You, you and not only that, but probably you will have to find new ways of doing certain things because now some things has been have been externalized, right, to another entity that does something and provides you with output, and then you have to handle it and making something out of it, right? So something that you can be sure of is some of the constraints of those tools. So focusing on the constraints of those tools is the most interesting part. I'm not meaning constraints in a negative sense, not like something they cannot do, but that constraints can be positive and negative, and they are restricting factors. They are putting some uh, I don't know how to frame it
Some
otherwise,
parameters.
but
They put the constraints put some parameters around what you can't do, so that it gives you guidance with what you can do.
so it can force things in a certain direction, but then you have also constraints that can enable new things that was not possible before. So it's not only negative, right? So focusing on the constraints can be interesting, because now you're just not talking about the really the features, but how the things works in context, and that's probably a bit more interesting. So you can be sure something is that they have limited access to reality, and they have no means of changing the reality by themselves, right? And it won't be the
Not
case
yet.
until we not true, that's yet, but it won't be the case until they have like a physical embodiment of their intent or goals,
unless by influence, which is what they
yes,
in a similar manner to the social media and the algorithms there.
Yes, and then
I
here
know
it
what you
will
mean.
be it will be an information game, right? It will be about
that's right.
how they can influence people. Yeah. Sorry, Dave, you want to say something?
But
I had a quote.
I think sorry.
No, the quote was about to go back to constraints. Constraints are a gift because they bring us something to lean against, and they give us a chance to focus on the work we can actually do.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
I think
that can be. No, sorry, Jack, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think in what I found was, or do find, is becoming a constraint, which I think your principles, almost, well, they align with the direction where we started going with that workshop scenario, right? Where one of the constraints is bandwidth, and on the human side, not so there's lots of constraints on the AI side, but one is, hey, look, great question. Here's a shitload of information. Good luck with that. And because then you've also got time restraints, right? And restrictions, in that context, where, one way that I started thinking that, and look, you've got it here, right? So these design interventions and supporting of theme generations in a workshop setting, having more eyes on those generated outputs, to be able to, reframe them in novel ways and useful ways. It's sort of one way of overcoming that constraint of bandwidth, is having, more people involved.
Yes. So it's not necessarily only about the bandwidth, but also the diversity of interpretation. So something you want is like if I give you I don't know, you ask something to ChatGPT and it replies, I don't know, it replies something like I take the article, I quoted something it's not coming from ChatGPT, but let's say it's a case, right? It said the word is cursed. It's doomed to change. What do you get out of that? I will have an understanding, and you will have another understanding. And Dave, you would have probably something different to say about that, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, it's part of the mediation of shared meaning between a group, and this is why it's more interesting to work with this kind of tools, thinking not in terms of individuals interacting with the AI, because I mean there's an entire discussion about intelligence and comparing intelligence between us and the AI, and I think really my position on that is it's just a dumb game comparing intelligences, because first of all,
completely agree.
I mean, first of all, it's not the same thing, so why even try to do that? Then why does that matter, really? Like, I mean, we are not talking about someone, we are talking about something that does some things really good, really well, and then some other things really like not good, right? And then that's fine. I mean, it's just a tool, right? So why even trying? I don't get that, but I mean, I know why they are doing it, but I mean, to me, it's really dumb, and it's
well, I suppose it's
about
who's doing it. You know, who's doing it is more to the point. Like, I mean, because there's more. There's the consumers, and then there's the ones that are actually building the narrative, right? And it is in their best interest for this technology to be expressed in a certain way, right? So it can move forward to the next stage, which is then, you know, creating human-like reasoning to be able to maybe go to that next point, right? But for now, it is just a tool. It is just, you know, a further expression.
It's serving as intelligence, right? So it's serving as intelligence, IQ versus intellect, like you were saying with reasoning. Whatever, there's a difference between intelligence and intellect.
That's right. And it's just it's us being served back to us, just a huge volume of information. Sorry, where were you going?
Another piece I was saying, like we shouldn't talk about intelligence, because even in the field of research about intelligence and what it means, no expert agrees on a definition. So I mean, anyway, it doesn't mean anything until you define what you mean with intelligence, and then you can compare things. But so what? I mean, so what at the end of the day? And so the issue with that is, because we are framing it as intelligent things that are better than one single individual, it seems to frame things as it would replace one person at one job, and you know, like at human scales. But it doesn't really work this way. And so what is interesting to work around AI as a group is now you can design not the feature of the AI, because I mean, let's open AI and those people do it. We can design how we work around those tools and what we can make out of it. And being as a group, that means that we have a power of interpretation of what we want to do with the tool and what we want to do with the output that is greater than just what you can do just as an individual. So you use the collective intelligence of the group and the AI that doesn't represent one person, but I would the entire knowledge or content that was fed on the tool. So in some sense, you extend the collective cognition of the group with the AI, and you use that extension to do interpretation, and then you let the group decide how they want to use the output, which is interesting because now you remove some part of the issues you have in the discussions about AI, is whether the AI should be more this way, or don't talk about these things, or blah blah blah. It means like adding more moral frameworks in the tool, which I personally think it's not a good thing, because now you have like tools that will be available to the entire world that will enforce some values on people that don't have the same values as you, but because it was built in the US and people are thinking this way, so even in China they have to think this way, right? So there's like a form of colonialism that that comes with the tool. That is, to me, problematic, and you can just avoid the problem, like dissolving it, making it irrelevant. If you decide to not go this route and say, let's say you buy this tool, and with it there's some instructions how to use it, what they would look like, and they would look like, as to me, the principle that I wrote. So it's not just relevant for AI, it's relevant for any tool, would say.
Yeah.
So this is where, to answer your question, I know it's a long tangent to answer your question, but
That's right.
to answer the question,
That's good.
it's I don't fear them to be irrelevant, because this is what I would say a group can do with any kind of tool that extends their cognitive power, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's like,
I totally agree. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, no, it's like you mentioned something about like the collective cognition, and I had a thought about, the context of constraint, and having like a piece of software. Example of, say, how we listen to music now. Almost everyone uses Spotify, and like lazy designer, lazy whatever. It's so easy and also difficult to just let Spotify choose the music for you. Now, you rewind 10 years ago and you think about when you had a CD collection, or even whatever, record collection. So the constraints were like, you have a flavor of music or a style, whatever it was, and you knew that you had 10, 20, 30 things to choose from, and you could, create a certain playlist, blah, blah, blah. And then, so with Spotify, obviously, you've got all the music available to you, everything that's on, online, and so that gives this reach as well. So you've got this long tail reach of obscure music that you probably never would have picked up, listened to, or not even your friends would have brought to the table. So it enabled real edge case, like obscure genres to be heard, and this is collective. I know it's not really the same context as collective cognition, but you understand where I'm going with this, where it's kind of like, and then you pick up new ideas, new flavors, new genres, and that's because of this long tail reach. And could a tool like this be used in the same way, like how more people, more edge case sort of scenarios, techniques, whatever.
That's definitely interesting. Yeah,
gets brought to the table.
Yeah, you're totally right. What you're discussing now is the notion of distribution of cognition. So basically, you distributed some decision power to a device that does it for you, right? So you still can say, oh, I want to listen to this kind of this. I would say you can enforce a theme, and then the Spotify will play some random music about the theme, right? And that's fine. You just set up the constraints. You agree. It shouldn't cross, right? It shouldn't go in this weird kind of genre that you don't like. So it's fine. And then you, like, there's trust, but it's an implicit one, right? You don't trust the tool. You don't trust Spotify, like, actively. You just decide that it doesn't really matter. Like, you set up some constraints and you expect it to work this way, right? That the friction would appear if it wouldn't do this. Like, it appeared to work this way, but suddenly it doesn't do it this way anymore. And then you'd be like, it's weird. It's not, when you said something and suddenly you have just one song that you just really don't like that comes in your in the playlist, and you say, why is it playing this music? I don't know. And then this is where the friction appears. But otherwise, you just don't really care. Like, it's not really something you're actively thinking about, right? So that means you distributed part of your cognition into that tool, and it's part of the discussion of extended mind and this kind of thing. I'm not really buying the whole concept, but it's interesting to think this way. But now you see what we did here with this discussion. Like, we we move the center of discussion from the tool, from the AI, to something somewhere in the middle, between people and the tool, right? And I would say it's a place where you can think in terms of novelty, of novel ways to approach AI, and think the kind of enabling capabilities that it can have on people, right? And thinking of how can people use it. It's not about the features of the tool. Like at some point it will be about features, but when you think before it exists, before there is something, it starts somewhere, and it starts in the relationship between this new tool that does something differently, whatever it is, and the people that are using it. And in the middle, there's this thick and rich layer of interactions and social meanings and stuff like that that exists. And this is what people will make out of it, that will, over time, move in a certain direction and start to crystallize a certain pattern of use. And then some people will make it a feature in the app, and it will become obvious to everyone. Yeah, this is the way we should do it, right? It become obvious. But before it become obvious, it will be in this in between state, and it exists at the interaction of the two. And then having this kind of discussion, you realize that you still have opportunities to design. It's not about the AI. It's not, you don't have to be a specialist in how AI works to design for AIs, right? I would say it's
to design with or design for AI.
It's, well, it can be the two, but I would say now we are not discussing really about the AI itself. We are discussing how humans, interact with it. So I would say it still lies more on the side of humans than the AI. But at some point, what you discovered about how we can interact with them can be implemented in the AI and makes new ways of working with it, right? So, like you say, with the principles, what I discovered, like about how ChatGPT works, for instance, I think it's really average at doing many things, but it's really good at doing something that actually it's designed for. It's making connections. Like the main, patterns of work of LLMs is to connect tokens that represent words together in terms of probabilities.
Yeah.
And because we know how it works, we can assume some kind of common patterns of doing things, right? It will say, well, if you have this word, then it's likely that you have this other kind of possibilities of words that comes with, and etc., and can construct phrase. I'm not saying it doesn't have to understand what it says to work, right? So I wouldn't put any kind of unwarranted knowledge claim on ChatGPT side, but it's good enough. It's doing that really well. So now, if you really clearly define, not clearly, but you put it a lot of themes, like you say, you have this issue, you have this challenge you want to tackle as a designer. You have your group, you have your team with you, and you did some initial research and traditional way, right? You came to people, you discussed with them, and you realize that there's this theme, like about this kind of problems, and this theme about I don't have time for this kind of thing, and this, you have a lot of themes that emerges from your conversation, from your research. Then you can input that in ChatGPT and say, find me connections. You just don't ask it this way, but you can ask it to find connections, connect patterns between them, right? And here you can have like novel ways of discussing about the relationship of people with time and the problem they have with this kind of tools or this kind of context and situations and stuff like that. And here you have opportunities to make novel connections that maybe you as a group, because of your, I don't know, cultural biases or I don't know what, you cannot foresee. But ChatGPT will likely highlight those links,
Yeah.
probably also provide some options, some alternatives, and then you are, as a group, free to discuss about those things and interpret them, what it means if what it would mean if we have to create something out of this understanding, right?
Yeah.
In our
Look,
context,
I reckon
with our
it'd be interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting, Kevin, to at some point think about what say choose like a common exercise that we would go through during the understanding or definition phase of the exploration problem, and maybe think about what some of those prompts would look like in a group setting. You know what I mean? Like, how would you? Because you'd probably want to have some sort of guidance, right? Like, or would you? Would it just be open to the group to sort of inquire? It's like everyone's got that just an extra boost of accessible knowledge available to them, layered over what we already do, right? Like, and would everybody be able to ask the right questions, at the right time? Probably not, right? But their input is equally as valuable, so sometimes the questions that we would ask as designers would be enough to prompt outcomes that then their perspective would be what we'd be aiming to pull out of those sessions, those collaborative sessions. But what sort of questions would they be wanting to ask that we wouldn't normally ask, and how would they prompt? Because I think that's one of the constraints short term that Dave and I have bumped into trying to co-design what we're doing now, this podcast, is simultaneously with the release of GPT Turbo and then 4, and we're like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to both see what we're prompting here, you know what I mean, both work from the same terminal, both be developing the same knowledge set through a dialogue with this model that's saved and can then evolve over time, and that currently doesn't exist. Like, it does. It's like you've both got a separate instance, unless we were to create it with and I've been looking at services like LangChain and things like that, because it seems like that. I'd really be fascinated to sort of think through what that might look like, a group context where there are moments where people ponder themselves and then bring their insights back to the table, and that collective interaction with that AI is stored as well as part of that ongoing thought process, navigating that complexity over time.
Yeah,
does that make sense, what I just said? Did I just ramble on for a little while?
No, it makes totally makes sense. So I have many thoughts about that, but so the principles are principles. They are not process, right? So I'm just proposing touch points of really some specific ways of framing what could be the process, but it's not the process itself, right? So I would say I see one risk to have a group having one single conversation with ChatGPT, because, as you mentioned today, it's not designed to have group discussions, right? And maybe you'd see here an opportunity for feature development in AI that would be, why not having the possibility to have group discussions with ChatGPT? But today it's not the case, right? But I see a potential problem with that is getting at a false consensus early in the process, because if one person do the proxy between ChatGPT and the group, that means you have already to converge to a shared understanding of what those things are, those themes I was discussing earlier are, and having to frame it one single time and expect ChatGPT to understand the entire group meaning, right?
Yeah.
So I would be more open to say, I'm not saying you don't have to do it. I'm just saying it's one of the main issue I can already foresee is a false consensus around the shared meaning. So to avoid that, you could say, let's the group discuss about the themes, agree on some starting questions, right? Then you set up like a 15, 20 minutes breakout. Everyone works on the side. It's kind of together alone work. Everyone take ChatGPT and ask questions, and maybe through the conversation, someone will go on a direction that was totally unexpected, and that's good because you are still early in the process. It's really early, so you want this divergence. You want to create more space for more things that you never thought about.
And it's also not every step in that divergence that's valuable to the outcome either. So having like that common space to chat, it's like, it's not that whole process that they go on that's valuable. There's also, they're also filtering the inside out themselves.
Yes, and they decide what is relevant for the group. Yeah. And so you bring back everything. You say, well, I had this discussion. It was really interesting because, I didn't expect it to reply this way. And then I asked questions, and it was not even in the, the original discussion we had about those themes. It was something totally unrelated. But now I see this can be really relevant to what we are trying to do. Bring that back in the group and let the group decide what they do with that. Maybe they do nothing. Maybe it's just important for one person and the rest of the group doesn't agree. Like it's, let the group mitigate. That's fine. But I would say let's open up opportunities at this stage.
What about the I just had this crazy thought. That's the part of the design sprint process, the crazy 8 ideation, where you're sketching the 8 different things and 8 different like little cards. Like if you had like I'm just thinking obviously of the Leonardo tool where you can spit out 8 different like generative AI art images. So if you had 8 different prompts using because you're trying to go through this crazy 8 experience, and it's like 8 times 8, so like it's crazy 64s or something like this, really really quick, and then you've gone bang, pulled out a bunch of things. I don't know if we'd be able to represent what you're trying to
one advantage you have right now is like you have your themes, you have what you had with ChatGPT, you have so much context to feed image generation algorithm to tweak up the prompts. So you will take this kind of keywords you have in all the context you created at the beginning, right? And you can change when I use this one, it's not really working as expected, so I will use this one. That's fine. I mean, now you have like a collection of keywords and things to associate together that still fit in all the work you did, but can be tweaked, or you can change, like replace a word, like instead of using this you use a synonym, and sometimes you just magic happen and you have something totally different. So that's the advantage is once you have enough context, it's just a matter of playing with words, and that you will have something really unexpected.
And part of that context, I think it's like the more, and it'd be really cool to maybe we can, maybe this can be a session that we collaborate on. Maybe we actually can play with this idea, put it into practice with a group of people at some point, just to get a feel for what the outcomes might look like. I mean, because I start to think, what that whole the issue of context for AI, how much of it would come down to getting the so you talked about with handling complexity and navigating design decisions. You've got a portfolio of problems that you're solving, not just the one. And I think with
Mhm.
what we're discussing here, potential uses for these large language models, that might give us the ability to focus on, or to increase that portfolio and put more time and effort into clearly aligning on with other humans and articulating what those problems are in the portfolio. And then through those conversations, it's already quite easy to remind these language models to look back at what the conversation is now through the lens of the original problem statement and mission. You can say, well, no, look, let's, because it currently, they remember that, right? Like if you put that in there, it's like, look, this is the problem, or this is the mission and vision. This is the problem that we're looking to solve. Here's some contextual stuff. You build that, in the chat bot, and then you have that conversation, and you try and break the thing and come up with lots of ideas, right? Bring it back for humans then to look at and discuss and provide differing perspectives. And yeah, I suppose where I'm going with that is that that's the cross section, right? Still nailing the that portfolio of problems up front that align with the vision and mission of whatever organization you're doing this for.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's just feeding that, everything that you do in these workshops through that context, right? And building on top of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's
I'm
no,
sorry.
it's
I'm
no
just.
like if
Good. Sorry. Good.
I think we should try it. I think we should do it. I reckon we should not right now. I reckon we should try and run a design workshop with multiple people utilizing some of these tools to improve our. Just see if it does. Does it help us in any way, shape, or form, or does it just cause more confusion?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I would like to share with you some things we already tried. So you can see some of the things that works and some of the things that just clearly doesn't work.
yeah.
So I will share my screen. Just still loading.
Yeah, cool. Do it.
Yeah, because I imagine like you could even have everyone has their own like Chat GPT window, and you could like, as you progress, you could feed the information into it so everyone has the same context, right? That could be something that works.
Potentially, but I like where Kevin was going with. Well, in some way, everyone needs to have their own as well, because not every part in that series of divergent thoughts is valuable, but the insights that develop from individuals having that conversation, are sort of their own, and they develop into something meaningful. But the pathway
But
to that,
at stages, right? Just at stages. So there could be like
Yeah.
interim things where you're putting different inputs in the interim, but at certain stages, it'd be really interesting to see how it unfolds and how it does diverge.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It'd be really cool to play through it, right? Like to try. But is this something you tried, Kevin? Looking at the screen.
I tried. Yeah, I know we didn't really try the process I just discussed it. We tried things that are close to that, but it was not in a workshop setup. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really open to try it actually, because it would be really interesting to see. Now we tried something like, so we did a design fiction exercise with we had like I would say 10 or 12 people in the group. So we split it in two groups. And what we did is what we tried to imagine. Let's say you go into the future and AI is everywhere. It's embedded into everyday objects. And so we prepared some objects. People could pick objects and so one group choose the house key, and another group took the food shopping list. And so we had like exercise to describe what it looks like, not really in terms of shape and form, but what kind of interaction does that enables, and what kind of constraints does that put in how people interact together? Like, what does it mean to have like a really smart or intelligent house key? So people we wrote down some description of that, and then we use that at the end of the exercise. We use that with I think it's Midjourney, or no, it's OpenAI's image generation. What's
DALL-E,
DALL-E, yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
yes,
DALL-E, DALL-E.
and we fed them with with it, and you see how it cannot imagine things that does not exist. Like, I mean,
Gotcha. Oh, that's what these are, because I have seen this board. I didn't realize that that's what these were.
Okay.
That's really interesting.
So the description is a portable device that you can move around your kitchen, and that gather information through wearables that know what food to order for me. The device can be attached to any surfaces, for example, the fridge, and it can project 3D models of foods, the doctor diet agreement, and stuff like that. You can have a conversation with it, so you have more freedom to ask for alternatives while still being in line with your diets. And then you have more context and blah, blah, blah. Just feed that to AI and just generate
That's
this
so funny.
weird looking things.
Yeah.
Because just scroll back up the image. That's probably why it looks like on one of those images that it's around this weird like blocky machine that seems like it's just wrapped around a Fitbit.
Yeah.
So it's so Dr. Medical. I think it understood like medical device and wearables and stuff like that, and just mash up things. But it's so weird.
It is. I think it's done a pretty good job of imagining just something weird looking that does look futuristic.
That's really cool. I would like to try and put these prompts through Leonardo and see what happens as well, rather than
totally. Yeah.
So that's one example. Man. Like, I mean, it's really not inspiring, right? As a result, it's just weird looking, and so that's fine for the purpose of the exercise. But really, like, if you had to design it, probably you wouldn't go this route, right? So that's not just what I'm saying, right? And now, what I did with ChatGPT is, so we created a framework with some colleagues of the community, so like we had like a lot of ideas already, and we had some kind of things really like well defined. I will explain what they are. But at some point, we say, would that be funny to use ChatGPT and to say what ChatGPT has to say about our ideas, and we approach it through the lens of creating a game. Okay, so it's not for ChatGPT. It was not a framework. It was a game that we are trying to create. So we have had like already a lot of ideas about what we wanted to do. So it's a framework about enabling designers to think in terms of complexity. So it's a continuation of the Explorer's Guide, but in terms of real tool, actually having a real framework that helps you do the work in that direction. And so we have the concept of oceans with colors. Oceans have colors, and those are the context you are working on, like the kind of challenges you are facing. And you have like agents in those oceans, and we call them archetypes or players, whatever. And they are really archetypes, so they can be the parrot, the navy, the explorer, whatever. So as you see, I used Midjourney to generate some visuals, and this is where it actually works pretty well, because once you have this kind of description,
and you can you zoom in on one of those agents? Can you zoom in on one of them so I can just see what's the navy? look at that. So the Navy Armed Force, strategic offensive role of Navy. So tell me, but these archetypes, are you getting the chatbot to act as though it's one of these archetypes? Is that what you're saying?
No. But we
No?
then at some point we asked ChatGPT to help us design a game where we have.
Yeah.
So we fed ChatGPT with the description of each archetype and the description
Sure.
of what we were trying to do with the oceans and stuff like that.
Ah.
We ask it to say what does it understand from what we provided,
Yeah,
And so
gotcha.
it provide a brief, and then we
Yeah.
started to play. So what could be rules to put in the game, so it makes
Yeah.
more sense to play the game? And it proposed some stuff. So I can show you what the output is. But just to say, so this is what we've done with the two other people. This is our writing. It's not ChatGPT or whatever. It's the themes I was discussing earlier, right?
Yeah.
So we also have description of some monsters we have in the ocean, and we have this description of the oceans themselves. What are their features? What kind of behavior they are enabling and stuff like that. And then this is what I gave to ChatGPT. GPT, sorry, is I would like to come up with a naval strategy game concept that uses characters such as the pirates and merchant, the navy, etc. They can be played on different types of ocean, the reds, and I provided the description of the oceans.
Wow.
And it replied exactly with the description I provided. So that's fine. It does understand what I'm trying to do. And then could you go into more details? What could be unique abilities and weaknesses that would reflect their affinity to particular ocean? And then this is GPT's doing. I mean, I didn't provide this kind of idea. So here you see when it connects themes together, it understood the ocean, it understood the players and their characteristics, and it tried to find some links in the middle. So the pirate's ability is skilled in navigation, navigating shallow waters, quick raids, and evasion tactics. That's fine because this is already what we anticipated with the group, but it's interesting. It goes in that direction.
Yeah.
So we have like this this discussion, like it's a heavy one, with GPT. And at some point I played with once. So I asked it to do some unexpected things. Like I came up with during the discussion with GPT. I say, so let's say in the context of the game, we want to create a metaphoric chromatic wheel, one for the character, one for the oceans, and one for the monsters, and one for the resources. The challenge is that we want to be able to superpose those 4 chromatic wheels so they draw similarities and contrasts between the characters, the monster, and the ocean. Of course, it says that it cannot draw anything, right? Because it's not the purpose, but it says it tried to do something like it says like each character could be assigned to a color that would represent the dominant trait. The ocean chromatic rule could be based on the level of turbulence and volatility and blah blah blah. So it proposed something really interesting, and this is what I interpreted. So we have like the characters by affinity or opposition given their behavior. And then the idea would be to do the same with the monsters, the same with the resources. And when you superpose them, you see which kind of character goes with which type of oceans, right? So here it's playful because you don't expect it to be right or to be true or anything, right? It's just random connections between things, and you play with the ideas. And I discussed that with the group after discussing with ChatGPT, and we started to build on that, and then so it's where it's interesting. So just to
that's really
connect
cool
with what we just discussed.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so you've already started down that pathway of just bringing more people to the table, and no, I really like that, Kevin. That's awesome. Thanks for the demo, and I think I've got to be careful now because we're coming up to 2 hours. And
Sorry, I talk a lot.
the
I know.
no. Look, it's yeah. Dave just said under his voice that under his breath. Then it's like, well, somebody needed to take the microphone from me. So it's right, Dave. It's normally me. It's normally me
No,
talking
that's
nonstop. People
yeah.
try to get it, and so Kevin, it's all good. You're in good company, my friend. But yeah. Look, I think we've really run out of time, and
That's okay. It means we get to do another episode at another time.
we should do another
Opens the
one
door. It's
another
a
time.
cliffhanger. It's like a series, sequel.
That's it, because literally I reckon we could spend quite a while just talking about your critical analysis of the design sprint.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, this
that's
one. Oh,
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's because I've run very very many of them, and I totally I think I've highlighted a bunch of points on your article because the points that you make are totally valid and relevant, and things that I've come across and overcome in my own ways over the years, and I think there's so much to talk about there, like in terms of what types of research can be done before and after, how to package them up into uh, methods, or groups of sprints, that perform different functions but really have different design methodologies at their core.
Hmm.
We won't go into too much detail now. Like, for example, created a version of it in the whole, because I still do from time to time cringe just with the thought of just as the whole fanfare around sprints and design sprints and everything. And, I get sick of the word so much, but in some contexts, it still makes sense to talk about it. And others, and I talk to Dave about this from time to time, you just don't give the methods that we're using names. They go by other names, and you choose how you speak about them around different people.
Hmm.
But we actually built or created a method that we called the UX sprint, which was it tackled some of the challenges around research, framed it in a way that was still that sort of Trojan horse, um, a method of introducing these ways of thinking to organizations, and also well, look, it worked, to a certain degree, but it definitely wasn't perfect, and it definitely had lots of holes that I'd still like to fix up. But yeah, I think there's lots of ground to cover there, because it's still something. It's still a process that I really enjoy, but I never tackle it the same way anymore. That's another thing. And I think that was one of your critiques. It's just like, it's rote, and it's got to be the same way every time. And I think be interesting to talk
Yeah.
about the different things that I've tried over the years. Probably over, God, it must be getting close to like 50 or 60 sprints over time. And yeah, it never seems to be exactly the same ever anymore. you know it's always sort of cherry picked bits and pieces of all sorts of stuff but still fitting within the mold of the 1 week bite sized chunk of something that people can understand. So look, I think with all that said, it's 2 hours
hey,
now.
buddy.
Great conversation. Could keep on going until I run out of oxygen, and hopefully we can find another time to keep it going, man. I really like the idea of you know experimenting with a workshop with you at some point in your community.
Yeah.
Maybe we could even try it asynchronously. That's something I've always been really interested in this space as well, which
Hmm.
I think the tools are getting. Look, it's never going to be perfect, but maybe some things we could do asynchronously, as well, to overcome that time zone issue. But
yeah, that
thank you,
would be really
Kevin.
interesting to let some people,
Yeah.
like, you leave the themes somewhere, and you some other people just take it and just, what does that mean to us? And just start again, in some sense, and provide it like a new meaning, like that the first group didn't even expect. It could be really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think when God, tools like Loom really do fill a massive need with asynchronous communication, which I think is sort of understated at times. How big a problem that tool solves on its own. You know what I mean? And if you can, if through fun and curiosity, explore some of these things asynchronously, but passing over the baton with a Loom video at the end in a Miro board or FigJam board, and see where we go. It could be kind of fun.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Yeah. But look, we got to find a time. I want to dig into this design sprint stuff, because I dedicated so much of my life to design sprints. And I learned so much from them that I totally, I'm definitely not wanting to defend them, and the design sprint community without addressing some of the real problems that come about from just blindly believing that they're the answer to everything.
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah.
So. Look, let's wrap this thing up, Kevin. Thank you so much for your time, and
thank you.
we'll enjoy your day. It's